The month of March is upon us, and it's tournament time for the North Dakota State men's and women's basketball teams. Hello everyone, I'm Brian Shawn. Welcome to the Bison Basketball Show. The final regular season games are in the books, and with one to play, the NDSU men still a chance for a Summit League regular season championship. But to get it, they would have to pick up a win over Omaha and get some help. It would be a shootout between the Mavs and Bison at Baxter Arena. Kai Cabellas, a pair of first-half three-pointers, this giving NDSU a 1-point lead. Later, Dengu drives, finding Dexter Werner for the slam. Werner recorded his sixth double-double with 25 points and 12 rebounds. Omaha, a spurt to end the half. Tradeon Hollins, one of his three steals, taking it in for the layup. NDSU trailed 47-41 at half. After falling behind by as many as 18 in the second half, the herd starts chipping away. Paul Miller, 6 of 12 from long range on the night. Then it's Kai Cabellas with the steal. He turns it into a layup on the other end. Cabellas had 12. The lead is down to just 8 points. Miller would continue his hot shooting. The tough fadeaway jumper in the lane. He scored 19 of his game-high 32 in the second half. NDSU would get within 5. But Omaha made enough plays late to hold off the rally. Marcus Tyus, the tip-in, he led the Mavs with 27, and they go on to win it 96-92 in a high-scoring affair. NDSU finishing in second place of the Summit League with an 11-5 record.
As a player, this is what we play for. You know, these are the moments that, as a kid, you're dreaming of, and you know, I think we're feeling good. We got a bunch of guys that have done it past 2-3 years, you know, so I think one of the big keys is never obviously to overlook an opponent or start thinking down the line. You know, we can't be worried against IUPUI, you know, who we're going to be playing the next round or the round after that. You know, we just got to go out and try to take care of business every night.
I think it's just fine-tuning everything. I think it's easy to get into games like that and kind of go away from your game plan and go away from things you've done all year. So I think the key is to just stick to what you do. Obviously, keep doing the things that have given us that success all year and just do them a little better, but don't go away from what we do.
We now welcome head coach Dave Richman to talk about the Bison men as they get set for tournament play this weekend in Sioux Falls. And Dave, 4-4 on the road overall. This last road trip, obviously one of your longest. You end up splitting, finishing in second place in the league. How do you feel about the way you're playing after you finish the regular season?
Well, you'd always like to finish on a win, but the two prior years we finished on a loss. You know, 2 years ago at Oral Roberts get beat, last year at Denver, and so you kind of relying on a little bit of that it's not the end of the world, but was certainly disappointed in the loss. You know, I thought our guys have really, in a lot of senses, surprised myself. That, you know, we've got a young group, but a very, very competitive group, a really resilient group, and they just kept battling all year long. And I think what you mentioned, 4-4 on the road, I think that was a big part of it too. We talk about road grit, road attitude. We found ways to get better there. Last year we only won one game that way, and so pleased from that senses, but also in a weird way, and not a bad way, but in somewhat a good way. This group's never made me comfortable, and I don't think they've ever been comfortable too. And I think comfortable can certainly be a good thing when you're really good, but it can also be a bad thing too if you just relax. And this group doesn't have room to relax, but I think they understand that as well.
Tournament play is always a different deal. It's higher intensity. You know, it's, as a coach, I know as a routine is a big part of that. Is the routine important this week, or do you change anything up as you get the guys ready with the long week and playing 3 games potentially in 4 days?
Well, it's just a different, you know, having a full week off before we go into it, Brian, is a little bit different than what we've been into. You know, we've been Wednesday, Saturday the last 4 weeks very consistently. So, you know, we've been smart this week of picking and choosing when we're going, how long we're going. I think this time of year, a little bit is you are who you are. You need to take this week and refine some things, maybe add 1 or 2 new wrinkles to throw at somebody. But I think the biggest thing is how sharp you are physically, how sharp you are mentally, and I think that a big part of that is just how your legs feel and all that going into this.
IUPUI, your first-round opponent, not a typical 7 seed. I think you and I talked a little bit off air about how crazy this tournament has the potential to be. A team you split with in the regular season, each game decided by 5 or less. Very quality opponents to start things off, and you know, a team that frankly, has a lot of experience.
I think they really epitomize what the Summit League is all about this year, Brian, and from a sense that I believe if they beat USD on Saturday, they're all the way up to like a 3 seed, or they're a 3 or 4 seed with Omaha, and that just tells you the parity top to bottom. And they're a scary team. I think they're playing their best basketball right now, and like we talked about off air, they've got 3 fifth-year seniors, and this is lose and go home time. And Dexter, Carlin understand that. I'm sure their 3 seniors understand that, and that's what's going to make this a special tournament.
Real quickly, you talk about the experience between your seniors, but also guys that have been in this situation before. Importance of that moving into this weekend.
Well, certainly, I think it's very important. I think we're going to lean on those guys: Dexter, Carlin, Paul, AJ. Kai was really had a good tournament there last year for us. All those guys that have been able to get out there and compete a little bit. I think that's big. But also, this is a new season. This is a new IUPUI team. I know we played them last year, but Darrell Combs didn't play in this game. Thomas wasn't there. They're going to be fired up, but so are we. We're looking forward to the opportunity.
All right, Dave, thanks much for joining us, and we will see you down in Sioux Falls this weekend. Continue with us here on the Bison Basketball Show. We will check in with our panel of experts to talk about the Bison men moving into tournament play. That's coming up next.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Mutual Insurance Company and Minn-Kota Windows.
Welcome back to the Bison Basketball Show. We are joined by a few esteemed guests here on the show this week. Radio analyst Jeremy Jorgensen, play-by-play man Jeff Culhane from the Bison Radio Network, and of course Greg Steeman, my partner in crime here on Midco Sports Network, as we break down the Bison men moving into the Summit League tournament. Guys, the Bison are the 2 seed, 11-5 in the regular season. They split on the road last week. Overall thoughts on the regular season for the Bison men coming into this tournament?
I think it was a good regular season, Brian. I think they had to really redefine themselves a little bit to keep up with the scoring pace in the league this year. Score more, maybe defend a little less to fit into the league a little bit. But they're going in okay. I think they got a pretty good draw. I like their side of the bracket. I like the fact that both South Dakota schools are on the other side. Don't have to worry about them right away. But I think the Bison are playing well, and they have the winning culture to turn on that switch at tournament time. They've proven it over the years here that they can do it at tournament time. They have that to draw back on. So I think the regular season went well. I think they had to, do some things a little different because of the way the league was playing this year, but they're going to be okay.
Jeff, I think you've seen them on the road too. You know how tough it is in this league to win on the road. For the Bison to go 4-4 in the league, that's pretty good.
Very good. I mean, considering what went down a year ago. This was a 1-win team on the road last season, and to go down to Vermilion and win, to go to Brookings, which I really thought was a springboard for this basketball team to open up Summit League play way back on December 28th, and win was extremely important. And I know last weekend did not finish it out with a victory over Omaha, but to start that week with a W at Oral Roberts, winning there for the first time since 2009, as Jeremy talked about, you've got some very, very strong culture here, which I think is important. It's important moving in to what we have coming up here this weekend with this Summit League tournament. Brian, it's as wide open as I think anybody can ever remember. I mean, this is going to be 1 through 8 across the board. I don't think all 8 teams can win 3 games in this tournament, but I think all 8 teams can win 1 game in this tournament, and that's what makes it extremely exciting starting Saturday.
I know wide open is a good way to describe it, Greg, especially the way teams are playing defense in this league. Everybody is struggling to stop the other teams, and defense, again, usually in this tournament, plays the bigger factor. Will it this year?
Well, I think it will come down to that, and the reason I say that is you're looking at teams facing each other for the 3rd time now. And you're also looking at teams where every possession matters. I think there's naturally going to be maybe 6 or 7 fewer possessions in each game, and then you gain familiarity. And I'll go back to what Jeremy said, and I think Jeff echoed it. North Dakota State has some guys that have been through these wars before. It was important for them to get to the top 2 seed. And, when they lost at home to USD, there were a lot of people going, oh, man. Well, USD goes on and wins the regular season crown. USD played pretty doggone well at that game, and credit North Dakota State for finding a way to get that Saturday night game.
Yeah, USD finishing like 5 straight wins, a couple of road wins. I mean, really impressive how they were able to go about that. We've seen Paul Miller had 30 points against Omaha, shot it well. Dexter Warner, another double-double. But those third, fourth, fifth scoring options have been up and down a little bit. A.J. Jacobson up and then down. Kai Cabellis was up against Oral Roberts, not so good shooting the basketball against Omaha. Who is the most important players or player for North Dakota State to elevate their game this weekend?
Well, I really think the Bison have to stay out of foul trouble. They call it a little tighter in March. I think you have to adapt to that. Keep the main guys on the floor. Paul, Kai, Dexter. I don't think you want to navigate through foul trouble right there, but I think you mentioned it, the secondary scoring is big. I think Kai needs to, be in double digits. I think AJ needs to be more consistent scoring the basketball to provide a third option there and not put so much pressure on Paul Miller and Dexter Werner. I mean, at Omaha on Saturday, 32 and 25 for Dexter and Paul. Need some other guys to step up a little bit, especially if the game's going to get up into the 80s and 90s. If the game's down in the 60s, maybe not, but if the game, which the league has seen a lot of this year, 80s and 90s, you're going to have some other guys score. That's going to have to be Kai and AJ because we know Paul and Dexter are going to provide points.
I love Kai Cabellis right now. I mean, going into that Omaha game, he was 50% from behind the three-point line in conference play. He is going to be a monster his final 2 years here in Fargo. He's got the makeup. You can see the confidence growing, and he's a guy that has emerged that people look at and say, 6'4", 6'5", long for a point guard, has continued to improve from behind the three-point line and score the basketball for this team. He's one of those guys, as Jeremy mentioned. Kai, AJ, Carlin plays well when the lights are brightest. I like Kai Cabellis right now and what he's doing.
Yeah, and I was going to follow up with the Carlin Dupree. Carlin Dupree loves these moments. Last year against Fort Wayne, he kind of put him on his back for a little while. You go back to the Oklahoma game, and I thought Carlin was huge in that overtime win against Western Illinois at home. AJ and Kai and the other guys, I just think that Carlin Dupree can be that guy at a key time.
Real quickly, biggest key to beating IUPUI in the first round game, 10 seconds or less. We'll start with Jeremy.
Yeah, I think you have to defend O'Leary. I think he's a tough matchup, and if he gets hot, they're very tough to beat.
Similar, IUPUI loves to shoot the three. It took them overtime and 60% basically to win in Indianapolis. If you're defending the perimeter, it's going to be a good night for NDSU.
North Dakota State has to play their best team defense of the year, just plain and simple. And if they can do that the first night, then they got to turn around and do it the next game after that.
And getting the day off would be huge for North Dakota State, especially when you look at Fort Wayne and Omaha, two teams that love to get up and down the floor playing on Sunday evening as well. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We will see you all in Sioux Falls this coming weekend. We'll be back with more here on the Bison Basketball Show. We check in with Mar and Walseth and take a look at the Bison women's draw after this timeout. Welcome back to the show. The Bison women's basketball team clinched a spot in the Summit League tournament last week, but a chance to gain some momentum going into the postseason, taking on Oral Roberts in the regular season finale this past Saturday. The Bison had not won in Tulsa in over 8 years, but would hang right with ORU. Brianna Jones, 7 of 10 from the field, scored 16 points in just 17 minutes of action. Lakota Beatty had the hot hand for the Golden Eagles. A friendly bounce for 3. She was 4 of 5 from outside the arc. Late in the first half, Taylor Thunstedt, one of her 3 triples, giving NDSU the lead. She had 11 points, game tied at 32 at the half. Sarah Jacobson opened up the third quarter by connecting again from long range. She added 10 points on the afternoon as NDSU grabbed the lead. After a 14-4 ORU run, Riley Jacobson driving to the basket for 2 and the foul. The Bison would trim the lead to 6 a couple different times, but Maria Martianez would go for 14 points and 15 rebounds for Oral Roberts. 10 of her points came in the second half as the Golden Eagles hold off the Herd 71-64. NDSU turned it over 21 times. That led to 25 ORU points. The Bison in the 7th spot heading into the conference tournament. We now welcome in Mar and Walseth to talk about the Bison women moving forward into the postseason. The regular season in the books, Marn. Exciting time for your team with an opportunity to play in the league tournament after missing last year, especially those seniors.
It is, and that's something that we talked about at the beginning of the season, and then we were consistently talking about that through the conference play, that we wanted to get back to Sioux Falls and participate and see what we can't do down there.
For 7 of your 10 kids, this is their first time they're playing in a league tournament. A good experience, whether it's good or bad, but at the same time, it's going to be new for them and for a lot of your coaches as well.
Absolutely. There was a lot of things that happened for the first time this year for a lot of those freshmen, but then you add the conference tournament with Brianna Jones and some of our staff, like you mentioned, and there'll be a lot of excitement going into the weekend.
Against Oral Roberts in Tulsa, good competitive basketball game. To play as well as you did, especially in the fourth quarter, that was the first time in a while we really saw your team really fight back in the fourth quarter in a while and play as well as they did down the stretch and almost steal one down there. That's got to be encouraging here as you prepare to go into this weekend.
It is. I was really happy with the intensity and the urgency, especially in the defensive end in that first half. And then the fight that we showed, as you're talking about, in the fourth quarter was great to see. And it was led by different people. It really started with Riley Newdell's transition layup right down the middle, and people just fed off of that. So I do feel positive, and I do feel good about going into the conference tournament.
Absolutely. And then for whatever reason, that third quarter, you and I were talking a little bit about that off the air, about how that's kind of been your trouble quarter, so to speak. How have you addressed that with the team? How have your coaches addressed that with the team? Because I know that's something you've been paying attention to as well.
Absolutely, and it's something we just haven't quite cracked yet. You know, we've gone and had different formats in practice, actually going back to the locker room and coming back out to continue practice in that third quarter. Certainly there are conversations at halftime with just those starters of the third quarter. There's statistics that we've looked at and talked about, and we'll keep plugging away and finding the solution, because it's not quite there yet.
IUPUI is your first round opponent, a team you just saw about 12 days ago here at the Shack, a team that's playing really good basketball. I think they've won 10 out of their last 11. What do you take from that last matchup and even the one in Indianapolis that you can carry over as you prepare to take them on Saturday afternoon?
It is. It's interesting that we are playing them so close to our second conference game there. And so I think we go back to the game at IUPUI where we're really, really competitive. They do present some challenges with Danielle Lawrence and Mikhail Rogers on the inside, surrounded by a lot of great shooters. But we got a couple days of practice here and looking forward to another competitive matchup.
And I know as the 7th seed, you're a low seed, but at the same time, that may allow your team to play a little bit loose because, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's go down there and tip it up and see what happens. Is that the attitude you're taking with the team?
I think so. To a degree, our kids really play well when they know they have nothing to lose. And so that's the conversation that we're going to have, and we're going to go down there and be able to have a great experience and maybe knock somebody off.
All right, sounds good. Good luck this weekend, Maren.
Thank you.
Maren Walseth joining us here on the Bison Basketball Show. Stay with us. We will be joined by our panel as they return to talk about the Bison women moving forward into the postseason. That's coming up next on the Bison Basketball Show. Welcome back to the Bison Basketball Show. We are once again joined by our esteemed panel of guests. Keith Brake, the voice on the radio side for the Bison women's basketball team, now joining us as well. And guys, when we talk about the Bison women, Greg, I think some growing pains inconsistent with C. I think we expected that. We saw that through the first part of the season. Got a little bit better, I think, in the second half of the season, but the team has continued to play hard and battle. I think that's the most important thing, I think, for the squad is they've continued to play extremely hard.
Well, that's the thing that always gives you a chance is great effort. And I'm sure Coach Walseth will take advantage. This will be the longest time they've had between games, in a long, long time. Can they regroup mentally? Can they maybe take a day or two off and be physically as fresh as they've been in the second half of the season? And if they are, you kind of embrace that opportunity right now that everybody starts 0-0. And here's our chance. There's no pressure on us. Let's go play our tails off. Let's play with nothing to lose, and let's live with the results. And that combined with great effort, then that's what you have to do is live with whatever ends up happening. That gives them the best chance to be successful.
Yeah, no question about it. North Dakota State may be playing their best fourth quarter of the season, certainly in the second half of the year against Oral Roberts as well. Keith, we talked with Maren in the last segment how 7 of the 10 players that are playing on the roster have not experienced a conference tournament before. So it's going to be new for a majority of this team. How does this team handle that? Because they really have nothing to lose. Maybe it's better because the freshmen probably don't know what they're supposed to know at this point.
Yeah, that's what Maren Walseth said about talking about Riley Jacobson early in the year, is that she has no idea how good she can be. I think that's the same for a lot of these players. They don't really know where their ceiling is. They don't really know what the expectations are for them as young players. They are expected to stumble. They're expected to fall. And so when they go out there and succeed, like they did in early January when they, on this floor, beat South Dakota and took South Dakota State to the wire, that surprises people. It's a source of pride for them, I think, and it's something that they can build on. And as far as what it does for them in the conference tournament, like you said, they play with nothing to lose. And if they play with the kind of intensity that we saw against Oral Roberts, where they stayed neck and neck with that ORU team in the regular season finale down in Tulsa, and IUPUI were to come out flat, I think they've got a real shot to take down one of the top 4 seeds.
Yeah, we saw IUPUI really struggling offensively in the first round last year, so you never know if the shots are going to be fall. You don't know what the atmosphere is going to be on a Saturday afternoon. All that stuff plays a factor when you're playing conference tournament basketball. Quickly, Jeremy, a step forward, I think, for the Bison, but the top 4 teams really did separate themselves. What are the keys for NDSU against IUPUI. Obviously, a big start is important, but this is a team that they led in the third quarter at Indianapolis in January.
Well, I think just hang around early, and IUPUI is so good defensively, best defensive team in the league. You got to find ways to score. I think hang around early, gain some confidence, and then regroup at half, get to halftime, find a way to score against this defense. IUPUI defends the rim very well. They're very sound, well-coached team, so just hang around and find a way to score because their defense is solid.
Yeah, they are a solid defensive, best defensive team in the league, but North Dakota State, if they can hit some outside shots, and the three-pointer has not been falling as easily for the Bison here the second half of the season, but they are capable. So we'll see what happens in Sioux Falls this coming weekend. Guys, thanks so much for joining us once again this segment, and we will see all three of you down in Sioux Falls, so enjoy the trip down. It's going to be a nice weather, too, so we're going to enjoy that as well. All right, stay tuned here on the Bison Basketball Show. We will wrap things up and take a look ahead at the conference tournament schedule. That's coming up next.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Mutual Insurance Company and Minnesota Windows.
Back to wrap things up here on the Bison Basketball Show this week, and we will have you covered this weekend on Midco Sports Network as tournament play tips off in Sioux Falls. The NDSU men will take on 7-seed IUPUI on Saturday night at 8:30 p.m., while the women will take on the Jaguars in the afternoon session on Saturday, tip-off set for 2:30 there. And remember, Midco SN will be televising all quarterfinal and semifinal games live from the Denny Sanford Premier Center March 4th through the 6th. That's a wrap for this week's show. We will recap the tournament next Thursday on the Bison Basketball Show. So long.